Welcome to Beyond the Black Veil. My name is Crystal. I'm your mistress of the mystic, your paramour of the paranormal. And tonight, we are going to be diving into 3 main stories. If you are new here, welcome. This is my creepy, scary story time. I'll be reading off some just terrifying things that I found on the internet, and I wanted to share it with you all. This is tonight. All 3 of these were pretty profound stories that I found over the last couple of days, and I really wanted to share them. And we aren't going to do a whole bunch of pitter-pattering around. We are going to roll right on into it with the first story, and this is from the Ask Reddit subreddit, and it's under the title of Reddit: what is your most disturbing, scary, or creepy real story? So in this subreddit, or in this Reddit post, there's actually just a long thread of people putting their personal stories. And so I've been scrolling through these the last couple of days, and there's a lot of really good stories under this post. But this one came across and I was like, what do you mean? And this is from Memory Eater, and this was 13 years ago, so we got vintage stories. So OP writes, I lived in a bizarre little house as a child. It was incredibly tall and thin, like an attached house except freestanding, with 3 floors, a basement, and an attic. It was full of quirks, such as 2 fully functional fireplaces, a shower stall in the center of the basement, a backyard so small that you could not take 5 paces without hitting the fence, and an old-timey rope pool dumbwaiter that led from the kitchen to my bedroom. I loved that weird little place, but unfortunately, it was incredibly old, and half of its charm was the fact that it seemed to have been designed by an articulate conclave of lunatics, and eventually the repair costs exceeded what my parents were willing to sink into it, and we had to move. Preparing for the move was a chore. I packed most of my stuff myself, and I had taken to throwing stuff down the dumbwaiter and shoving all my clothes so thickly in my closet that they became a single solid brick of fabric. Okay. While clearing that closet out, in fact, I came across a feature I hadn't noticed before: an attic entrance in the roof. An attic entrance in the roof. Believe it. You don't have to, you've been there this long, don't open it. You don't have to open it. Move on. It's okay. FOMO, fear of missing out. That's going to get you. That's what's going to get people. OP writes, being an adventurous kid, I opened her up, stood on the closed brick, and began my first and last exploration into the topmost part of our weird little house. The first thing I noticed was that it wasn't as dark as it should have been. The place was strung with old, red Christmas lights, which still burned with leftover incandescents, and a dozen little cracks and holes peeped down into the bedrooms below. Huh? Okay, were they like already there, or did whoever hung these lights put those holes into the bedrooms below? I hate that. I truly hate that. The second thing I noticed was that the place was set up for habitation. The insulation was plasticated away. There was an old gurney piled by sleeping bags and sheets, and a rusted mint green refrigerator which still worked when I tested it. The third thing was the bones. There were a lot of bones. I don't like that, because why were there bones? What kind of bones? OP writes, I was a kid at the time with a limited understanding of anatomy. but there were bones of all types, heaped into a series of piles around the center of the attic, small and large, clean and white, from every and any imaginable sort of creature. Well, I also imagine humans, so is that in that list? I don't like it. Haphazardly stacked in a half dozen osseous clumps. Two of them were blackened, as if someone had tried to burn them, and the nearest walls of those blackened piles were sprawled in dark, bone char messages. Mostly, they were just smears, but the word sorry appeared more than once. That room had been sitting over my head for 8 years while I slept. I I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. So I keep saying I don't know what to say because for 8 years, somebody was over you, over your room with a whole little setup. They got lights, a whole refrigerator. Was it like a mini fridge? Because it just says a rusted mint green refrigerator. So was it like a full size refrigerator over your head? And bones? I don't, I don't know. So, yeah, that's, what do you think? So clearly this is a Frogger type situation. Somebody was living in the house. I think we have probably come across these stories at least more frequently, more than we have maybe heard in the past. But yeah, and I'm just wondering, like, did you not hear this person? Like, I would think even just like somebody writing on the walls with bones, that makes a noise, right? Above your head, and they got holes in the floor because were they watching you? Were y'all like their TV? I don't I don't like that. Um, so yeah, also having a brick of clothes in your closet is really diabolical because what? Did you not wear them? Did you not wash them? Because why were they in a brick? Or did you just have that many clothes, or was that closet just that small? I need answers. But yeah, so that's the first story for tonight. Really would love to hear your thoughts on that. Wherever you're listening, if there's a comment section, please tell me what you think because I don't know what to think because that's what I said before. Truly don't know other than Frogger and my emotions are all over the place. So let's get into story number 2. This is titled, She Called Him the Sad Man, but I Knew Him as My Neighbor. Now, there is a trigger warning for this. This is going to be mentioning suicide, the death of a close family member for the family that was affected. So, if that's something that you don't want to listen to, you can either fast forward or you can sit this one out so you can take care of yourself. Okay. So this is from, once again, the Paranormal Encounters subreddit, and the OP is Frosty Builder 9326. OP writes, This is one of the most memorable encounters I've had, and there is a little bit of backstory, but I'm just going to sum it up. So when I was growing up, we had these next door neighbors that we were very close to, and we went on vacations, we slept over each other's house constantly. Over the years, the mom and the dad had hit a very rocky part in their marriage, and the mom decided to ask for a divorce before leaving to go on a summer trip. During this time, the dad decided to take his own life, and this was heartbreaking, not just for his family, but for us since we were so close. After his death, his family moved out of the house, and about 7 months later, a young family moved in with 3 small children. At this time, I was babysitting to get extra money, and they had heard this and asked me if I would be willing to babysit while they caught a late night movie. So by the time I got there, the baby had already been put to bed, and I would just have to put the toddler and the 5-year-old to bed. But the 5-year-old could stay up until 9 p.m. So time passes by, and I put the toddler to bed. And then the 9 p.m. rolls around, and I go to put the 5-year-old to bed, and she asks if I can read a story to her. So I said, of course. While I'm reading the story, the 5-year-old keeps making weird faces and looking over my shoulder. Anytime a kid looks over your shoulder while you're reading and they're making faces, and you know that there's no one else in that house unless it is the toddler. Uh, I thoughts. I no, it's creepy. Kids are already creepy. That is just that's creepy. So I asked her what is bothering her, and she said, "The sad man is back again." And I'm a little confused. And I'm like, "The sad man?" I'm confused too. And she's like, "Yeah, he's right there. He's sad, and he keeps upsetting my baby." And she had a little baby doll with her, and she kept saying that he was making her baby cry. So I asked her if she wants me to close the door, and she said yes. I finished the story, I wait a little bit, and she eventually goes to sleep. I go and check on the baby, and it's the room where my neighbor had taken his life. I open the door, and it's ice cold in there. There's a little dim nightlight attached to the baby's crib, and while I was leaning over to check on him, I feel what feels like fingers on my shoulders. I check on the baby, he's still asleep, and I leave the room and I go downstairs. Are we not acknowledging that you just got touched by something that wasn't there? That why you're trying to check on this baby? We just go downstairs? Okay. I'm sitting there watching TV downstairs, and the way the house was, you can see the stairs going to the second level, and it looked like someone was peeking out, and I kept seeing what looked like a head peeking out, and I just thought it was one of the kids. So I get up and go upstairs, I switch on the light, and the doors are all still closed. I check the upstairs bathroom, no one's in there. I think to myself, maybe I'm just scaring myself, and so I go back downstairs. About 20 minutes later, I start hearing footsteps, and it sounds like someone's pacing, and it sounds like they've come to the top of the stairs and stopped. The kids' doors were still closed, so I knew it wasn't them. A few minutes later, the 5-year-old comes running out of her room, and she's crying. She comes up to me, and I'm trying to get her calmed down and tell me what's going on, and she tells me that the sad man came into her room and that she's told him he's not allowed in there, but he came in and he was standing at the foot of her bed. Ugh. I eventually get her to calm down, and we go back upstairs to her room. I grab a pillow and a blanket and just let her sleep downstairs on the couch with me. I wasn't going to put her back in that room. While she was trying to fall asleep, you could see her door, which was left open. It was moving as if someone was leaving. A half an hour passes, and her parents finally come home, and the dad asked me why she's sleeping on the couch. I was just going to tell him that she had a nightmare, but she jumped up and started telling her dad about the sad man. Her dad rolls his eyes and tells her there's no such thing, and helps her go back upstairs to her room while arguing back and forth with her. I felt bad because the dad did not want to hear any of it. He just kept telling her, "You're going back to bed and stop talking about the sad man." The mom paid me and thanked me for watching the kids at the time. I wanted to say something, but I didn't know if it was my place to say something. The house had always been a renting house, and in my state, you're not obligated to tell the people that someone had passed away. So I went home, but I kept thinking to myself that night if I should tell them or not. A few days later, I was telling my other neighbor what had happened, and he was the one to go over and talk with the mom and let her know what had happened at the house 7 months prior. Crazy enough, the mom had had experiences along with the kids, but her husband was never affected, so he was very skeptical. So that's why anytime he heard his kids talking about the sad man, it would irritate him, thinking that they were just making an excuse for not going to bed. My family moved away about a half year later, and I kept in touch with a few of my neighbors, and from what I heard, the family was still there for a year and left the house, and the house remained vacant for 3 months before it was sold to a new owner, and that's the last thing I heard. I thought that was a pretty, it's a sad, very sad story. It's obviously hits my radar because it's paranormal. I just thought like it was a sad story because the parents of the previous family, the one that lived there, they were having a rocky part of the marriage, and apparently that affected the father after the mom decided that she wanted a divorce, but he's still at that house and not with his family. And I just that breaks my heart. And kids are just always in my mind, whether they are trying to be or not, kids are sensitive to those types of things, to spirits and paranormal things. And I'm that parent that if my daughter tells me, "Oh, I saw somebody peeking around the corner of my room," and she has said this before, I believe her. I will tell her it's probably just a loved one, just peeking in to say hi, especially if they never met you. Like I believe in, honoring my ancestors, and I have an altar that I have pictures, and I talk to them just like they're here sometimes. And so I just, in my mind, that, naturally they would probably want to peek in and see a little mini version of myself. And sometimes I feel like she encounters that. So like, yeah, I believe kids, period. And if they say they saw a sad man, especially if she keeps saying it and she has interacted with the sad man. I mean, kids have really just phenomenal imaginations. Like, as an adult, trying to get back to my childlike imagination for creativity and just innovative purposes, even at work, and then some inner child work too. But kids' brains, man, they are able to create things. But I think in that same vein, because kids' brains are so just open, that is what makes them vulnerable, for lack of a better word, to sensing and seeing things that we just can't see, or having spirits interact with them, because their mind is so open that they don't understand that you're not supposed to see this man who is not here on this mortal plane anymore. So I thought this was a fascinating story. It's sad, like I said, that he took his own life, and that the family split apart like that. And even for the OP having lost, that close connection to not only him, but the family. And it seemed like they had almost become a joint family together. So like I said, that was from the Paranormal Encounters subreddit. And the title was, "She Called Him the Sad Man, but I Knew Him as My Neighbor." All right. So just like my other stories, very interested to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you've had similar encounters, I would love to hear those as well, whether you put them in the comments or if you email them to me, please feel free. We're going to move on to our next story. Now, this is our last story for the episode, and it is called The Old Waterhouse. This is from the R Scary Stories subreddit, and the author is Black Cat 1206. Over the heath, there was an ancient crumbling waterhouse where the entire estate's water system was managed. Believe me, we thought it was a miracle how anything that old and manky could keep and pump out any water, but it did. It was made with bricks, with a black slate roof and iron doors. Although at the time of this incident, it was just a shadow of its former self, and didn't have any doors. The windows were all smashed in by generations of kids throwing rocks and stones at them. And it was there where my mama and her siblings were kids, and they played over the heath. And they all told us it spooked them and their mates as it did us. It was a really hot day one summer in the school holidays, and the older boys were at home for some reason, and all the younger cousins, me included, were being little brats. And so the boys said that they would take us all blackberry picking to keep us quiet. Mama agreed gratefully, and the boys were really responsible and mature at 16, 17, and 18. And they babysat for us younger kids all the time. So we all knew the rules of staying close to the boys and doing what they told us. And so a half hour later, everyone had their fruit buckets and we were off. There were 5 of us younger kids. We were all really excited as blackberry picking was a great family favorite activity, and our Grand's blackberry pies were the best. Grand's house led directly onto the back of the heath. There was a fence with a gap at the end. One of my older cousins passed me through to the other, then lifted my tiny wheelchair over the fence. The other kids were through it in seconds, and we were away again. On our way to our destination, the older boys told us spooky stories, as they always did. half because they liked scaring us, and half because we all used to beg them to. There was nothing more terrifying than a story from my cousins H or B. They were masters and so believable. We loved it. We all stopped talking when we came to the Waterhouse. No one ever dared to speak around or near the Waterhouse, not even the older boys, for something so mundane it always looked, and still does, so eerie. There was a second fence to get through before we reached our beloved blackberry field, but this time, as we squeezed through the gap of the fence, we were all more somber as we remembered the old wives' tale/urban legend that we all knew about the Waterhouse. The story goes, once in the early 1960s, there was a gang of bank robbers. They were local to the area and they were really nasty pieces of work. Their expertise was terrorizing bank customers and staff alike before grabbing and shooting anything that moved. They did several jobs without getting caught, but they really messed up a particular job, and a sweet 19-year-old trainee bank clerk was shot dead, and 5 more people were seriously injured. One of the gang was also shot, along with the nastiest member of the gang being seriously wounded in the crossfire. It is said that the remaining gang members escaped with just a few hundred and made their way over to the heath and head out in the Waterhouse. It was newish at that time and was a perfect hideaway for the murderers. There was a lot of contention and stress behind and between the remaining gang. Months, although it was never proven how, the bodies of all 3 of the remaining gang members were discovered rotting away in the Waterhouse 6 months later. A few years after the weird stuff and creepy noises started occurring near and around the Waterhouse, mysterious hairy figures were glimpsed moving stealthily amongst the pipes and wires. A dank, moldy, rotten smell like aging river weeds was always smelt around the area of the Waterhouse, and eerie wails and menacing murmurs could be heard day and night. In the late 70s, there was a spate of mysterious deaths of homeless people who would shelter over the heath not too far from the Waterhouse. There was nothing to ever link the deaths to the Waterhouse, but the locals soon started giving the Waterhouse and surrounding area a wide berth because of the creepy history and dark reputation, and that left the Waterhouse abandoned and in despair. That's what we knew of the Waterhouse and its dark history. That is why we're very wary and anxious to get away from it as quickly as possible. When we were all through the gap in the fence further away from the Waterhouse, us younger cousins built up enough courage to glance over at the building of ill repute before being rounded up by the older boys. A put me in my wheelchair again, and we set off to the blackberry field. We soon arrived at the field, where some other local kids we knew were already there, and we spent a nice afternoon picking and eating the juicy sweet blackberries and splashing in the river, and as soon as the sun was setting, it was time for us to go home. Our journey home was much like the one there, where we were still bantering and laughing, and the older boys were still winding us up slightly. But being as it was getting later, we were feeling wearier and slightly subdued. When we reached the fence before the Waterhouse, the air felt slightly too close, like before a thunderstorm. The youngest of the 3 older boys got me out of my wheelchair so that B could lift it over the fence. The other kids were already on the other side of the fence with H and B. Suddenly said to his brother in a low, guarded voice, something moved at the back of their bruv. B just looked at him sideways. Out of the boys, A was the most likely one to pull a stunt or wind someone up for a laugh, but A was straight-faced. A said, I'm going to have a look, passing me through to B and squeezing past us all. Wait up, A. Having put me in my wheelchair, B had moved forward towards his brother when we all heard A shriek out in horror and disgust, and the 2 boys moved back quickly. H, having already taken me out of my wheelchair again, had told everyone to run, and we did, B picking up my tiny wheelchair, folding it up while running, A, grabbing the other two kids' hands and following B and H running with me on the shoulder, holding my other cousin's hand. We ran and ran. A kept saying, "Don't look back, don't look back." I did, but I saw nothing. We didn't stop until we got to the fence, which leads back to the road on the estate, and we could eventually see civilization again. We were all completely exhausted, especially the older boys. Before we slipped through the fence to the road, B, holding himself up by the railings, asked, "What did you see, A?" Yellow eyes, hairy face. All of us younger kids began to panic and scream, and H had to calm us all down. He said that we were safe and it would be all right, but we all wanted to get as far away from the Waterhouse as possible. When we got home, we all looked bedraggled and slightly nervy. Mama and my auntie noticed this and asked the boys what was wrong. H just said that we had gotten spooked by the old drunk man in the bushes looking for golf balls to sell, and as that was quite commonplace over the heath, Mama and my auntie just gave us kids a pep talk and hugged us. We never did tell my mama or my auntie the truth about the yellow eyes and the hairy face, or find out what it actually was, but us kids didn't go near the Waterhouse for a long time after. I thought it was a really cool story. I don't know what it is that they could have thought that they saw, with a hairy face and yellow eyes. I mean, in my mind, and not logically so, Bigfoot, skunk ape, what, you know, is it just, a houseless person that is there and they just didn't know how to really interpret that because they were still kind of young. I don't know. I just thought this was a cool story. It's written well. I always get a little suspicious because I'm like, is this real? And it might not be, but I still do love a good creepy story. As true as I can get them, but if the OP, which is actually in the comments, they're saying that this is a real story, so I like to take people at their word where I can. And I just thought you would also enjoy the old Waterhouse story, along with these other two stories that I read off tonight. Um, that's all I have for tonight for our stories. If you are watching me on any of the podcast platforms, if you haven't already, please follow, subscribe to my podcast. I'm trying to get my numbers up. I'm trying to build a community so that I can, do more things. We can have live events, etc. If you are on socials, seeing me, if you're on YouTube, watching me, I love it when you all comment. I am always in the comments, and so I do actually respond. So definitely, if you want to chat with me, that's a great way to do that. On TikTok, I do a lot of short form and a lot of teaser videos for the longer episodes. And so I have a couple of short videos there that are mini stories. And so there's even more content over on TikTok and Instagram. My Facebook, I am on Facebook. You can follow me. I believe I'm still trying to figure out my Facebook page because it doesn't seem like people can follow me, and I'm trying to figure that out. So just bear with me on that, and I'll let you know when it's up. I'm also on Threads. But yeah, pretty much wherever there is somewhere to be, I do try to be in those spaces. So if you haven't already, please follow me. And if you have your own creepy stories or weird encounters with either the paranormal or the humankind, please send those to btbvpodcast@gmail.com. I would love to read those on the show. I got my first listener story. I'm so excited to read that story off, and I would love to do a full listener stories episode soon. So I can't do that unless y'all send me your creepy encounters, so please do so. And if you could, in the title of those emails, write listener story, and then somewhere in the body of that email, please indicate whether you want to be anonymous or not, so I don't give out your name or or you can give me a username or whatever if you want to have me use that instead. But that is all I have for you for this episode of Beyond the Black Veil. Thank you for hanging out with me, and I will see you soon. Have a great day. And if you can't do anything else, be spooky, but stay safe. Bye.